Hello. This video is about the criteria tabs and the criteria section in Chartsmart for running filters. So right now we're looking at a chart, and if we go to the filter button, which you've done in order to get to this video, you have the two tabs for filter sets and criteria to be used. So filter sets is like the bucket where you give it a name, like stocks that are over $10 on New York, and then you have to actually put those things in the bucket, the criteria. So it's kind of like having a pail and filling it with things. So let's go over to the criteria to be used for this criteria set, or this filter set called Bob. Now there's two ways you can go there. You can click on the criteria to be used, or you can actually double click on the filter set. You get the same result. Okay, so this would be the menu that you probably started at, and there's the video button that would have activated this. Now there's this help here, which brings up a written menu, and I'll go into the tabs next. So the first tab is the exchange tab, and before I go into any of these, I want to show you that a new feature is that if you click on the name, a menu will come up and give a description of that criteria. So you don't actually have to check and choose it. You can just sort of go through. Now you'll notice there's nothing here for these ones. There's a little note here about the TSX, but we have a lot under, for example, if you go under the technical ones, and you might go to Bollinger and you click on it, you'll get a fair bit of information, okay, on these ones, for example. Now our intent is to make it so you have information on every single criteria. So this is a new feature where you can click on the name and get the information on the criteria. Okay, so looking at the filter set Bob, we need to choose anything from all of these options, these tabs, and there are a lot of options. The simplest ones are the exchange ones, and as you go on they seem to get more complicated, and then you get into the more detailed ones, which are special, and you specify. So the idea is that each tab has a list of criteria, and these criteria, like if I take say Toronto, whoops, sorry, I clicked on that. I should actually clicked on the box. Okay, so it puts it into the basket. So I can go and take another one. I can take, okay, I want stocks on Toronto that are and I'll just put over the traded price of $10. Okay, and I could close that, and then I could say, well, okay, I want them to be a part of the TSX composite index. Okay, so that's what we've done. We've filled up the basket. Then you can go back to the filter sets and then click the green button, run the filtered list, and you get your 193 stocks and this summary that tells you the criteria that you used. And you have two options when you want to look at the charts. First, you can just click close the group, and that'll automatically bring you to the group button, and we'll just do that in a second. And the other is you can actually place your 193 securities into a watch list under ZWatch, which is a neat feature because then you can do sub-screens of that later. Okay, and of course you can just close, and then if you want to close, you have the option of sorting in all these various ways, the 193 securities, and there are a lot of options. Okay, so we could go for daily volume of shares in descending order, and then we would get the highest volume ones first. Okay, so what we're going to do is and we could close and go to group, and of course begin scrolling, and we would see these 193 securities. Okay, now let's go back to this area of criteria to be used. that's all simple. That's good. Let's go through some of the details on these tabs, okay? The exchange ones are very simple. You select the exchange. You can select any combination of exchanges and they just go into your basket. Sector ones are similar. You have these top ones, which are kind of like, whoops, sorry, I clicked the name again. But these are sort of like one group, basic materials, and then you have all the subgroups within them. You have consumer cyclical and all the subgroups. The financial services, all the subgroups, real estate, consumer defensive, healthcare, utilities, communication, energy, industrials, technology. Okay, so that's pretty simple. You can choose a sector, apparel stores. Let's see if there's any out of that 193 that come up. There might be one or two. One. Okay, so that's fine. We'll go back. So we have our filter set, and or the filter set filled with some criteria, and we can either save that to a watch list, so it's we've got a picture of it, or we can just keep this set in our list and we can run it every day or every week or whatever we want and scroll through the charts. Okay, so these ones simply have a checkbox on the left, and the type is the same. We have different types. For example, if you don't want to include for Canada, if you don't want to include warrants, rights, preferreds, and units, then you can select this. And so these give you various options. You can go down further and whoops, sorry. You can go down further and I kind of lost things here. There we go. Now on the bottom of this type tab, there's primary sectors. So this is a little bit like the sectors tab, except it's like a master group. So you don't have to click all the buttons in the basic materials section over here. You can just take this and choose that, and it'll give them all. So this kind of should be in the sectors section, but if it were, it would probably be even more confusing. So we put it under the type section. Now you'll notice none of these have a button because you don't really need to worry about the range. There's no range for whether the TSE is greater than or less than, or the sector is. But once you get into these ones where you have the price, you'll see that there's an edit button. The price, the volume, technical indicators, fundamentals, okay, and I think that's all. The other ones, now we're into watch lists, portfolio, last, and these ones don't, but then you get the last three, which are sort of, and not custom, but then special and use specify have the edit button. So all of these ones with the edit button have ranges. So you've got price, volume, tech, fundamentals, special, and you specify. Now let's go to the simplest, which is the price. So I'm going to take some of these out of here, and when you click on something on the left, it highlights it in yellow, so it's a little easier to find. And we've taken that out, and we'll take out this one. Okay, so now we just got price, and it automatically went back here. So if we click the edit button, we get the name of the criteria and some notes. Not the same notes as when we click on the name. Those are more generic. And then you have the option to select your range. Last traded price is greater than. Okay, and then there's a little summary about the menu, and it tells you what each thing is, just like I'm telling you. Now, something to note is on the bottom is this box, which is the formula. Now, you might ask, how do we create these pre-made selections? And you'll notice that the word last, which is the variable for the price, is between two number signs, and that's the way we make it. And then you can see it's simply greater than or equal to XX, which is your variable, $10. So that is the foundation of all of these tabs, and when you get into use specify, that's where you can actually put in your own variables. If you know the variables, you can put in variables that you want and create your own formula. So we've basically gone to use specify, created the formulas, and you're running them. Now, an interesting feature that most people wouldn't see is on the bottom here. Just click here for info on how the screen is distributed for various companies. So you'll see I have the CDNX and Toronto, and I have the price range, and I don't know, I can't right remember, but I don't know if the price range matters here. But what this does is it gives you a distribution chart, which is really kind of neat, and it analyzes the two exchanges to see where the price range is. For example, on this criteria, like 71.82% of the companies have a price range between that range, which is that many. Or, you know, very, very, very few have a price over $200. You can see, for example, between the TSX and Venture, only 14 that are over $100. There's maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 companies. So this distribution chart kind of helps you set your ranges, and it's kind of interesting, and it's available for, I believe, anything with an edit button. Okay, so we'll go further here. I don't really want to use the video to discuss the specific screens. What I'm going to do is turn off this one, and I'm going to show you how the formula is different if I take this one, for example. Okay, now the formula, you can see, is that the close, I believe, minus the close 4 days ago divided by the close 4 days ago is less than whatever you said it would be, 5%. So you can see that the how the formula kind of works. And then we also say and the close is greater than 0, just to keep any ones that haven't traded out. So all of these will be like that. You'll see a formula at the bottom. Now, as you get further into it, some of them are more complicated. But let's go to the volume. Okay, and one of the ones I find most interesting is percent of the last 30 days traded. Okay, and it gives a slight description there. And this is like out of 30 days, the last 30 days, how many of those days did this company trade? 15? 20? If it traded 30, this number would be 100%. If you put in 90%, it would be 27 days. And this really works well in getting companies out that might trade 3 days out of 30 days. So that's the volume ones. And then the tech ones are at the beginning. We have some basic ones, like the tick price is up 2 days in a row. Here's one, the volume is up 3 days in a row. And again, these will all be filled in with information in the future. And then you get into the indicators, where you can see, for example, we'll go through a simple one, the SMA simple moving average. The 5-day line crosses up through the 10-day. Okay, and we have variables in Chartsmart, and there's a web page that has all the variables you can refer to. And this SMA 5P means the value of the simple moving average, the 5-day moving average, 1 day ago, okay, and is less than, I think that's what it is, but the P means that it was 1 day before. I'm getting confusing, but there again, there's another formula how it was constructed. This is really powerful in Chartsmart. So you don't have to worry about these because you've done it, or it's already done for you. But what's neat is you can then put 5-day and 10-day simple moving average lines on the chart, and then you're going to be able to run screens and find all the ones that are occurring with that crossover. And we can go further. RSI, on balance volume, Bollinger Bands, MACD, stochastics, Williams, Chalkins, ADX, average true range, and candlesticks. And we'll just look at that really quick. This is an example of a candlestick formula that's describing something, and I'm going to show you, just if you're a candlestick type of investor and you look for that, we have like 50 candlestick formulas made somewhere else that you can sort of paste into your own formula, and that's under the use specify. Okay, so we're not going to worry about this right now. The Fund tab, again, is a really powerful tab. There's a section here on the top that says exclude all ETFs. You can use that for the specific screen, but I want you to know that I'm going to go out of here and go into the main menu, that under display and miscellaneous display settings, there is an option, number 16. It says if this is checked, then all ETFs are excluded when you run screens. So this is actually really nice to have, because when you're looking at ETFs, and I can show you back in another new feature we had here, which was some interesting information. This kind of broke down each exchange, and if you take Toronto, there's 2,928 companies right now, but 819 are ETFs, and you might not want to look at those, so you might want to turn this option on. New York, 4,600 of which nearly half are ETFs. Not so much a NASDAQ, but still, you know, if you want to see these blue and red lines with fundamentals and so on, you're not going to see those on ETFs, and you're not going to be looking at real companies. Now, you might want to just look at ETFs, and that's fine, but I'm actually going to leave that option on right now. So I'm going to go back here to the Criteria tab. Okay, and let's continue with some of the fundamentals one, and we do have the second one here. It says number of days a security is traded, which is kind of an interesting screen if you don't want to look at stocks that are brand new. For example, if they were just listed 2 months ago, and you said you don't want them to have traded, you want them to have traded at least within 2 months. You could set the number of days for that. So just briefly going down the fundamentals, you've got PE ratio stuff, earnings per share, revenue, dividend, number of employees, and this is a really broad list of screens, and what's nice is you can combine these with all the technicals. Okay, dividends, EPS, revenue growth, balance sheet items, important ratios, and these are especially useful if you're looking at bigger blue chip Toronto stocks or US, NASDAQ, New York, and there's the ratios. Okay, so we've kind of covered these. Now you've got these three here, and what they are is they carry over your watch lists or your portfolios or the last list that you filtered. So you see, whatever the last list we filtered, we could select to use that and do another filter on it. Okay, and this, you notice, doesn't have an edit button because it's not necessary. Similarly, we could go to the portfolio option, and I don't know, I guess I have a sample portfolio one, so let's go take a look at the portfolio, and I have one in here with 3 companies. You can see Barrick, BMO on Toronto, and Disney on New York. And just remember, there's 2 on Toronto and New York. Okay, so if I go back to the filter menu and I go to, and I make note, I'll take off the exchange, that I only want stocks on Toronto. If I do a sub-screen of my portfolio, I should just get the Toronto ones and not Disney. Okay, and that's what happens. So this option allows you to do screens on your portfolio and watch lists that you select, and then you can put them in watch lists if you want. And similarly, the watch is, this watch one is the same. So those are pretty simple, but it's kind of hard to understand what they do without being told. Okay, so we've done all of these on the bottom, and then we have the in and custom, and they're kind of similar. And you can see under the in tab, these are all related to Canada. Okay, these are the TSX capped composite index, the energy index, the financial index, and we actually have all the stocks that are components of these indices. So for example, I'll just take this out of here and I'll go to the in tab and I'll say I want all of the Toronto stocks. Well, I guess they're all going to be Toronto anyway, so that's not a very good way to do it. We don't even need to say Toronto, but because we know they're on Toronto here. But if I take the ones on the TSX composite, I think there's going to be near 300. Okay, maybe 250, 236. Okay, so these are big companies on the TSX composite. So that's what the in tab is, and you can look at ETFs in Canada. You can look at the ones that on the TSX Venture that are constituents of the Tier 1 and Tier 2. And if you click these, like before, it'll give you a little summary of what they are. Okay. Now, the custom tab is a little more generic. Okay. And what I want to tell you is if there are certain lists of stocks that you're interested in that kind of don't change or get updated every month or two and we can access, it's possible to include them in here. For example, if a newsletter writer has a list of 50 or 100 companies that they monitor, we could actually include this in here, and then you could scroll through and their various suggestions, or it could be any kind of reason for some group. For example, we actually go through the news and we do some screens for cannabis companies or COVID or crypto. So for example, if I were to take this one out, let's go back here, and I were to go through and say I want all the Toronto cannabis companies, and I were to run the screen, it would use our pre-made screen and give you these ones, which you can see, for example, there's Weed, there's Tilroy, and Cron. So we've and Aurora Cannabis. So we've tried to build some pre-made lists under custom for you. And then you have some other ones like the stocks in the S&P 100, S&P Composite, the Dow 30. So these are US ones. Okay. Now I'll just take this out. So we've covered all the tabs except for the two most powerful, and if your head's hurting now, it's really going to hurt. So but this is meant to be a broad introduction to everything, and the simpler of the two is the special tab. Okay, so let me take out this cannabis company one, and we'll go to and we'll leave Toronto, and we'll go with the venture as well. We won't include the CSE, though we could. I guess we can leave that. There's no reason why not. And we'll go to the special tab, and we'll go to Canadian news release filters. Actually, I think I'll go to the simpler one, and that's the new listings, which we haven't filled in either. But basically, we keep up the companies that are newly listed. So you could look at all the New York stocks that have new listings, or NASDAQ, and so on over a period of time. So this box here has them all out of the whole spectrum, going from August to 2022 to the current date. Of course, this date here, total range covered, is it will change if I put in the actual date, which I think is about the 9th today of 2023. Okay, that's 180 days, and I could change this and go back to the end of 2022, say, or say to this to 09 01 2022, and the date will change from 180 to 161. So what I can do is run this screen, and that was really quick, and you can see the date. There's this NASDAQ one, there's some on the CSE, and these are going back to September, and I can go all the way down to the last one that's in here up to January 6th, which is a NASDAQ one. So this is the grand list, and now we need to trim it down some more based on whatever other criteria we have. So we've brought over new listings. Let's see what we get. So we're basically going to look for all the new listings since September, I think it was, of 2022 till now that's on these 33 exchanges. So this might take a little longer to run, not that long. Longer is like 5 seconds with Chartsmart. So we can go to close and go to group, and we can go begin scrolling, and I'm just going to switch to daily charts, and you'll notice that I have filter alerts on, which I don't really want on, but so I'm going to turn those off. They're under indicators. There we go. They're kind of a neat feature, but let's not confuse things with them. You see that blue line? That's the new listing line for this stock. Okay, it was just listed, and we'll just scroll through them, and you can see that one here, and there's one. And if we do go back to the first news release, it's kind of hard to click on it. It'll probably say I missed it there. I could actually go to the summary button. There it is, and it says spin out of the stock is now complete. So it's a new listing. So neat feature, especially if you're looking at bigger companies and you want to look for new listings that have certain patterns. Very powerful. Okay, so we'll go back to the criteria now, and we'll take that one away, and we'll go to the next one, which is a little more complicated, and that is the stock splits, consolidations, and name changes. So same thing, you've got a box here with all the different exchanges, and you've got the dates in the bottom. So for example, if I say I want to go back to the January 1st of 2022 till today's date, 404 days, and I run this, I get 75 different splits. Now you'll notice there aren't many splits on Canadian stocks. Okay, they're all on NASDAQ and so on, and what, whereas in the Canadian ones, if you go consolidations, there's going to be a pile of them. Usually it's more especially on Vancouver. You can see there's quite a few here. There are some on other exchanges. Consolidation is when it's a reverse split. So you can see the number on the left is actually lower than the number on the right, whereas a stock split, it's the other way around. Okay, and then of course there's name changes where there's no change in the structure, so therefore these are both the same, but the name changes. So for example, if I were to look at that and I were to go back and run a screen on those stocks, we haven't got any of that information in for the Canadian Stock Exchange yet. But if we go through here, we begin scrolling, you'll see the little NC, which is name change. Okay, and these would have all happened, there's another one, in the last, since September 1st. Whoop, I clicked the wrong thing there. Right there. Okay, so another neat thing, because name changes tell you something's changing, something's going on, and especially when it gets down to consolidations. Let's look at stock splits on US companies. Okay, so we'll just change this. It's easy to do. We can just turn off these exchanges and look at New York and NASDAQ and take out this one here. Okay, and let's see what kind of splits we have over the last few months. Okay, I've got something wrong here. I think I probably chose consolidations, I'm guessing. No, let's see what we got. Maybe there aren't too many in that period. Let's go back to 2021 and see what we get. Okay, there we go, a few more, but let's take a look at this. Okay, so you can see that these are new, companies in the US, and you can see the little SP, which stands for stock split, which you can click on and get the information. Okay, so if you're looking for stock splits in the US, then you can look at the pattern afterwards and so on. Let's put this back to the Canadian Venture and the CSE, and we'll take this out. We know how to use that now. If you click on the edit button without clicking on the checkbox, you just get a little message say, hey, you better click on the checkbox if you want it. So we've done that. Stock splits, consolidations, and name changes over the period that you specify. Okay, so let's go on to news release filters. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you can go into those menus and click on the videos for them. But let's take the Canadian one. I'm just going to say that you can choose from our picks, like private placement, and then you can select the range, and you can just do a headline search, which it's done very fast, and it's got 2,000 news releases with private placement in the headline. Once again, we go back to our Canadian stocks, and we can run the screen for all the headlines that had private placements for those exchanges, and then we could scroll through them. Okay, you see those extended red bars? Those have to do with those specific things were screened, and those are they will have private placement in the actual headline. Pretty neat. So and similarly, if we're in here in the where was I here? News release filters. I just click edit now since I've checked it already to get in here. Instead of going through the news headlines, I can do the same thing and go through news releases, which I'm not going to do, but you'll notice the button's green, and we do that just to prevent any confusion so you know what you're going through. And similarly, you can do that to the US. So if you choose New York and NASDAQ, and then you go headline screens or news content screens, you can do it there. So that's the special tab. Very powerful stuff. And I'm going to carry on and do a very short summary of the use specify, because it probably encompasses more than everything I've talked about. What I'm going to do is add the first one, and you're just going to see what it meant. And you've seen this now, this idea of making your own formula. And this is what we did for all those others, and now this is the area that you can do it yourself. So if I click on create formula, it enables me to change that. Right now it's not changeable in gray, but I can change it. Okay, so you go, well, how should I change it? Well, that's all determined by the variables. So you need to know the variables, and that's where this link comes in, variables for the custom lists, and that brings up our web page, so you can see all these different variables. Okay, and it describes what they are. And you can put any of these in there between those two number signs and use greater than or less than. And I even believe that, I can't remember where, but there's the I forgot what you use the word for, like and or greater than or less than. They're in here in some section. Maybe it's in the screening section under one of these sections, but I'm not going to get into that. But that's all part of creating your own formulas. Okay, so another thing you can do is when you create your own formulas. Let's go in here again. High net worth per share, or you can use under use specify. I'm coming to an end here now. I'm gonna do this high net worth per share. There's one that's been made there, And you'll notice that this about backtest files, and that's a whole other area that's unique to Chartsmart. But before I even touch on that, I'm going to go into this other area when I create formula, and this thing on the bottom is a database of formulas that we've created. So, and this is what I don't know if I mentioned about candlesticks at the beginning, but we have a lot of candlestick formulas that have been made. And if you look at that bottom right box, you'll see how all the formulas change. And these actually will allow you to take that formula and use it. So for example, if I go back here and I choose a new one instead and go create formula, it's blank. I can go down here and choose any of these different things here, like an evening star, and I can go paste and I can put it in here, and then I can run it. So I don't know what that is, but if I close this and close this and run the screen, it's going to apply that evening star candlestick pattern to those three exchanges that I chose, along with what other parameters. So we got 10 companies. So if you're into candlesticks, Chartsmart's pretty much the best thing you're going to have for screening really quick all the possible candlesticks. And of course you can make your own formulas and add them in there. So those are the custom formulas, and we can add new ones to those. And you might have just noticed when you saw that, when I went there, there's a thing on the left that says update formula database, and this will actually enable you to download any new changes that we've had. So that is this is the customizing area, and there's a button down here, and this will describe it more. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that, because the back testing, all I can say is when you screen during a day, I think this will be the best way to explain it. You have like a giant spreadsheet with like 15,000 symbols down the left and all the things that you can screen on the top. And that's the file that we use for running these screens on any day. So I'm going to go back and just show you what one of those files looks like, and it's in the backtesting file downloader area. And down here is display a sample backtest file. And this file, I don't have any backtest files, so I'd have to download some. So why not? Let's just download one and see. I'll stop it part way, so we'll probably get a bad file, but let's just stop it here if I can. Whoop. And it should automatically after that try to unzip the files. If not, I can do it this way. And one of them is going to give an error because I did it too soon. Okay, so I assume it's just going to take one of those. There we go. So one of these we downloaded, and like I said, down the left you can see a pile of symbols. Okay, and if we go across the top, you can see on the top all the different columns, and those are what you can screen on. Okay, but what's important, we'll go back to the filter menu, is, and unique to Chartsmart, is that when you create your custom screens, imagine having that spreadsheet, but imagine having 365 of those spreadsheets for this year, or 250 for each trading day. But imagine having access to 5 or 10 years of those. So you can make screens, for example, a MACD crossover that occurred 10 days ago, and then you can see it on your screen or on your charts. So Chartsmart allows a lot of possibilities when you use the backtest files, but that's a whole other area that we won't discuss. So that's it. That is I was going to say brief, but I'll say long discussion on the criteria tabs and how the criteria work. The filter sets menu is another subject in itself, because it talks about printing charts and how you can print your filtered lists and so on. So that's it. Thanks very much.